Okay, in this lecture we're going to be talking about absolute versus relative cell references. And you may be wondering, what does that even mean and why is that important to me? And I'm really excited to show you because this is not only a very cool trick to understand in Excel, it's also very important when it comes to trying to do certain calculations on certain spreadsheets to save yourself a lot of headache. So let me just demonstrate for you quickly what absolute versus relative cell referencing is. So I'm going to put in a formula right here, and we're just going to go with our good old sum formula. And I'm going to reference a couple of cells over here. We got C1, and I'm going to hold the control key and click D1. So there we go, C1 and D1. Click enter. If I double click back in the cell, you can see our formula. So we have the sum of C1 and D1. Pretty simple. Okay, I'm going to click off that. I'm going to highlight that cell again. And I've showed you this before, but it's good to see again. I'm going to now hover my cursor over this little green box in the lower right hand corner of the cell, and you'll see my cursor becomes a skinny cross now. And I'm going to left click it and drag it down a few rows, and I'm going to copy that formula down those rows. Now let's see what happens when we click on these. The first one is just how I set it up. The second one has copied the formula, but it's changed the row to row 2. So instead of being C1 and D1 up here, it's copied the formula to C2 and D2, and so on and so forth. If I continue to go down here, you'll see that it's copied it for each row to match the cell that I've entered the formula into. Now this is known as relative cell referencing. And it's very valuable in Excel for the purposes of copying formulas exactly like we've done here. But what if I wanted to have a relative cell reference in column C so that it did continue to move down each row, matching the row that the formula is in? But what if I only wanted to reference cell D1 as the other number that it's adding to? How would I do that without manually entering all these formulas? Well, let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and delete these, go back to our original formula. So I want the C column to change, and I want the D column to always stay in row 1. So here's an awesome trick. If I click on D1 and I push the F4 key on my keyboard, watch what happens. You see those two little dollar signs that appeared next to the D and next to the 1? Those are the magic symbols that make this cell reference an absolute cell reference rather than a relative cell reference. Now watch what happens when I copy this formula down the rows. Okay, this first one is the same as our original version. But when we go to this second one, look what happens. The C reference is relative. It's moving with the formula. But the D reference is staying exactly where I told it to go. Now watch as we continue to move down. See how the C reference continues to move relative to our formula, and the D reference stays absolutely where we told it to stay. Now you might be following along and thinking, okay, well that's neat, but what's that going to do for me? When can I use that? And I'm so glad you're thinking that because I have a perfect example for you. So in this very simple spreadsheet, we have some sales reps. We have their monthly commissions, some dollar figures in here. We have a formula at the bottom here, a sum formula that just calculates their totals. No big deal. We have their total monthly pay, which we have not calculated yet. And then we have a holiday bonus over here of $500. Now what we want to do is create a formula in here that will calculate all of their monthly commissions and include their holiday bonus in it so we get their total monthly pay. And if we were to create a formula here, a simple sum formula saying $2,000 from cell B2 plus $500 from cell D2, and then try and copy that down, what we'd wind up with is $2,000 plus nothing, and $2,100 plus nothing, and $2,300 plus nothing, because that relative cell reference would move down with our formula. But by using our absolute cell reference, we'll put in our sum formula again, and we'll reference our monthly commission and our holiday bonus using the control click. And then we'll hit the F4 key. Oops, timeout. I just put an absolute cell reference on both of our references, and we don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to click on the D2, hit F4, and now we have a relative cell reference over here, and because of these dollar signs, we have an absolute cell reference here. So I will hit enter to complete my formula, and you can see it's taken the 2,000 plus the 500 and added them together for our total. Now let's click in here and copy our formula down, and as you can see, it's working. So we have 2,000 plus the 500 up here at D2 is 2,500. $2,100 plus the 500 up here at D2, 2,600, and so on and so forth. And we can double check our formulas to see that this is still doing an absolute cell reference to this one cell up here and only that cell, and this is doing a relative cell reference to the cell 1 to the left of the formula. And we'll check this one down here, and the same thing. So that's the difference between absolute and relative cell referencing, and that's how you create an absolute cell reference, so you can copy formulas down large columns in your spreadsheets, but still being able to refer back to one specific cell or a number of specific absolute cells.